So I want to take a minute to introduce our speaker for today, Tracy Malone, presenting on bearing witness to narcissistic abuse, the facts. I want to tell you that Tracy founded the narcissistabusesupport.com webpage, and that's a global resource for victims of narcissistic abuse. Her website concentrates on educating survivors and leading them to resources that they need to heal. Tracy herself is a Sur Thriver, and I like that term a lot. Maybe she'll talk more about that in a minute. And she's also authoring a book called Divorcing Your Narcissist. You Can't Make This Shit Up: The Tricks Narcissists Pulled During Divorce and Strategies to Be a Sur Thriver. And the book is about to be released. And if you haven't been to our webpage at Interface, you can get more information about Tracy and go back to find a link to the recording at this link here. So anyway, without further ado, help me welcome Tracy to Interface.
Hi there. Let me get started by talking about who I am. Barry did a quick introduction to me. I am in Broomfield and I am a Sur Thriver. Thought I made up that word. Many years ago, I started calling myself that, putting the survivor and the thriver thing. I was like, I just made up a word, until January when I found out someone trademarked it. So I've been in a trademark battle, particularly because it's on the cover of my book and in it about 200 times. Instead of saying the story was a survivor, we call it a Sur Thriver. But I have officially won the trademark and I can proudly say that's what it is. So I brand myself a Sur Thriver, and I'm going to go through in a few minutes talking about what that means to somebody. But I wanted to give you a background. Barry said, you know, where did I come from? How did I get here? That sort of thing. And one of the things that I want to point out is that many victims of narcissistic abuse don't even know they're being abused, which sounds a little bit crazy, but the truth is that until you have to learn this stuff, you just think that people's behaviors are, you know, it's just them, or we can minimize the things that they're doing and saying to us. Also, there's a stereotype, if we will get into that screen in a little while, but people assume that narcissists are, you know, very loud and all about them, when the reality is that they can also be very covert. And this is where the victims end up, you know, being fooled, because the people that they're dealing with don't yell, don't hit, don't cheat, don't lie. And so they're like, well, I don't have a narcissist because I don't have any of those things. And we'll talk, and I have a slide about the spectrum in a little while as well. I don't know if you guys know Rich Williams, but I don't know if he's on the call here, but I met him going through my divorce almost 9 years ago. And he was in Rebuilders, or running Rebuilders at that time. And I met him as I was going through the divorce. I had no idea what was happening to me. I knew that this was not normal. And I just had no words for it. It was 7 trials. I was accused of a plethora of false things. I was like, I didn't steal money. You know, I didn't do this. What do you mean? I didn't, you know, it was just one accusation and I didn't understand it. But I went through the whole divorce never knowing and having the words. Then I started dating somebody, and that is about 6 years ago. And that relationship ended. And it ended because this man I'd been dating for 2.5 years, found out he was cheating, and walked away, said, thank you, bye-bye, don't want anything to do with you. He kept coming and explaining, let me explain why I cheated with the only other girl at Christmas dinner. And I was like, go away, don't want you. And one day, about 3 months later, I was on my way home from a forgiveness sermon at my church and decided this was the day. I had it in my blood. You know, you get to church, you get this inspiration. I'm just going to pass his house on the way home and just go and forgive him. Don't want you back, but let's get rid of this monkey on my back. I went to forgive him, and a few minutes later, after yelling and calling me crazy, and I didn't understand what this was. Where was this? Isn't this the man that had been in my driveway all these months trying to explain? He was just tirade and yelling at me, and he called the police and had me put in jail. And when I got out, someone said, he's gaslighting you, look that up. That unfolded my entire life. It explained my divorce. And then I went farther, here I am like a convict, if you would. I was only in there for 24 hours, but I was like devastated. I'm a business owner, a mother. What am I doing in jail? I don't understand. How could this go so wrong? So I started to look even deeper. Why? As all victims do. Oh, it was my family of origin. I didn't realize, I always knew my family was crazy. Everyone always said my family was crazy. We just didn't have the words for it, but it explained my mother, it explained my sisters, it explained friends, it explained my in-laws. My entire life was unfolding. In about 6 months, I went from learning about the narcissist to learning about my own vulnerabilities. When you're raised by a narcissist, you really don't learn boundaries. You learn to be people pleasing, because if you didn't please your parents and your family, there was hell to pay. So you learned to just keep the status quo. So my vulnerabilities were something, how do I heal those, right? I started immediately, besides having to take required domestic violence classes for 6 months by the government for me being arrested. I also started working with CCADV, which is Colorado Coalition Against Domestic Violence. They have a new name now, but they're down in Denver. I became a member of a survivor caucus. So that was very helpful. I really learned kind of a different angle to this. A lot of the people and the friends that I met in that survivor caucus were beaten, their children were taken from them. I just learned a whole lot more to it. And I said, how could I have at that point made it like 55 years and not known this stuff? So I was dedicated to make a website to educate the world. It was a big goal, but I was like, I am going to teach people whatever I'm learning, I'm going to do it. My son came home from college and said, Mom, you should make YouTube videos. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah. And it taught me how. So I started making YouTube videos. My website started to grow. And then I started a Facebook group. Yesterday, it hit 15,000 members. And I have 9 admins that monitor the site from New Zealand to New York. And again, we started with nothing. We started with a couple hundred people and was like, oh my God, we're up to 300. And now we hit 15,000. And trust me, we are the most selective support group out there on Facebook. I have one friend that has over 80,000 people in her group. I don't want to manage 80,000 people, so I'd rather kick them out and make sure we have really good quality people in there that are not abusive. Again, now I'm answering questions in the Facebook group and I'm seeing more people's pain. I'm seeing their challenges, and I would pick up a book and start to learn. Oh, let me learn about that. Let me fix that. Let me learn this. And I just became this detective and just kept hungry for knowledge. And so then I said, well, the next step was to actually meet in public, meet in person. So I started a Boulder Group. I now have a Boulder Group that meets once a month. We stopped for COVID. This was last week, was month 2 in doing it. And then I started an ARVA group. It's actually a subsidiary of it's called the Denver Group. We have meetings every single week in Lakewood. And then I don't run those, one of my members does, but I have the ARVA and the Boulder Group. I changed the format from them just so you know what's out there. And if you are looking for yourselves or for someone else, going around the room with, in Boulder, we can hold about 21 people in the room. And in Arvada, I've topped over 45 people in a group at once. And so when we've got that kind of thing, if everybody goes around the room and tells their story, an hour of your 2-hour meeting is gone, but also the trauma of listening to other people. So it's just not healthy to go through the story over and over. You get re-traumatized. So I really teach how to heal. Last week we did anger. We're going to do boundaries. We're going to learn fear. We're just like dealing with all of these little sort of pockets of helpful information. I picked up my coaching licensing sort of stuff and started coaching people. That map behind me on the wall represents the places on the world, at the top ones, I don't even have them all on there, where my website reaches. And I have coached people in China, Germany, on New Zealand and Australia. It's so cool to have someone in the Cook Islands and someone in Australia in the same week, or, you know, Singapore, things like that. It is world and a global. And then when COVID hit, I took the support groups online and started teaching my lessons again. These are very small groups. They're only 8 people. They're only women at this point. But we go through those healing topics. Today, I am a Sur Thriver, and as Barry said, my first paperback book is coming out soon, and it's really big. And I've been working on that for about 2.5 years, and it is on divorcing a narcissist. Again, my site keeps getting bigger. I speak all the time. I bet you guys didn't know that there's something called World Narcissist Abuse Awareness Day. It's June 1st. It's every single year. This is the 5th year. This year I was on the keynote panel of speakers, and last year I was the keynote. So it was such an honor to be, you know, able to speak and educate people that way. So my life is completely transformed from the day I was arrested to my journey of building support systems for people. And, you know, your education is absolutely the most important thing to learning about this. I've dedicated my whole life now to understand what the victims go through and how to help them, and really find the words. And this is an important part for those of you that are therapists. We actually have our own language. We have our own sort of NARC dictionary, if you would. But I want to take you through some of the facts. And it's important to know this because until I started doing groups in person, I really, you know, and even the Facebook group, I was like, there's men that are abused too. I didn't know, you know, again, I was in my own little tiny world and I hadn't started coaching and talking to that many people yet. But, you know, a narcissistic person or someone with NPD, there is no brand of human called narcissist, but for the use of this thing, we'll just call them the narcissist, right? They can be male or female. And if they are going to show behaviors, it's usually later in childhood, and it's usually caused by some sort of trauma or abuse in their own families, that they've kind of like resorted to this as, you know, their default coping mechanism to not be hurt themselves. So they get abusive in that way. The statistics are that, and this is from 2008, and I have it in my book. Everyone's got it in their book because it's the only stat that's out there. The sad part is that it's so darn old, and narcissists don't actually go to therapy. So we can't count them. Like, who's counting them? That there's nobody sitting there going, you're a narcissist, you know, otherwise we would be in big trouble. So for my book, I actually took this 6% of the population number from 2008. And again, most of the statistics are the men and 38% are women from 2008. But what I want to count is the victims. I don't want to count them because they're not coming in standing in line, right? If you were to take that 20 million, you know, 6.2% of the people and go, they don't just hurt one person. No. They hurt their children. They're abusive at work. They're abusive to their neighbors. There's so much that they do that 10 is a pretty low number for the amount of people they're going to have affected in their lifetime. So that equals about 200 million victims in the United States alone. Forget other countries, they're, you know, it's epidemic. And people ask me, well, why is this, like, why are we hearing about this more now? Why is it like coming? And it just seems to be, we talk about it a lot. The awareness has never been so great. the amount of books and education that's out there. YouTube, I call it YouTube University. I have a woman, I'm going to show you her book later. She actually is an educator and a psychologist in California that academia doesn't like it when she talks about this topic. So she took to YouTube, and literally within an hour, she has 100,000 views on her stuff. And so it's showing you, wow, right? Podcasts, blogs, and people like me that are brave to come out and talk about it, talk about what they learned, what they've gone through. That helps victims so much because they relate to the story. This is a health crisis. And, working with Dr. Romney, who's the one I'm going to introduce the book in a little while, she says therapists aren't really taught this. They get usually 2 weeks of training in personality disorders. And so it's just not done. It's not enough education. People need it. They haven't read 200 or 300 books like I have. And I'm not saying that's the mark, but they got that, they learned it, and it doesn't go much further. Our court systems also are not prepared to handle what's going on in this thing. They're not trained. The awareness of the tactics that they use can really hurt our children. So those are things we want to know. You've all seen the DSM5 criteria, the grandiose self-importance, the preoccupied with unlimited, success, and their sense of entitlement, lacks empathy, they're arrogant, right? We know these behaviors, but it doesn't necessarily mean how it translates to the victim. So while these are what we get in the DSM-5, which, as you all know, it's kind of old, it's not giving us a full picture. Dr. Romney is one of the peoples and the doctors leading the charge to actually have narcissist victim kind of as a thing in the DSM-5. She's really working hard to have what the victim goes through put into the DSM-5, not just talk about them, because they go through a lot of stuff. We have to remember this can happen in any sexual orientation. It could be any age. I have coached people that are 16 years old that are being bullied by people in school. And so there is no age limit. Culturally, religion doesn't matter. Spiritual narcissists are constantly coming in and abusing people that have the trust in them because they might have a spiritual leader position. They can be romantic relationships, co-parenting, divorcing. It could be like me, my family, my siblings, extended family, our friends. So many people that can have a narcissistic friend when it just sounds like they could just get rid of it. It's not that easy. It's a difficult process for anyone that has to sort of get one of these people out of their lives because they've caused so much internal damage. I have a woman that had a work narcissist, her boss. It ruined her career. She didn't leave her house for over a year and a half, and crippled by the trauma, crippled by the PTSD, crippled by losing all of her own power. And the last thing I wanted you guys to know is I also coach people, and I'm sure you've had them, where people's children, whether it's their adult children and they're now isolating them, say, from the grandchildren, or as young as a 10-year-old where the parents are going, this isn't normal. What do I do? So it's everywhere, right? You've all heard of the standard kind of, overt, grandiose, covert, malignant. I added into my book, The Rich and the Poor Narcissist, and I'm going to explain that. It's so important to you because they have a different way that they kind of attack things. So when we think of overt, right, we are looking at this sense of entitlement. Basically, it's the poster child of what we read in the DSM-5. They're charming, they're confident, they're attractive, they're entitled, right? They have great jobs. We think of them as the constant mirror gazing and I want to take a selfie kind of thing. They can rage, right? So those are sort of the upper level of the narcissist. And then we go into the covert ones. These are the ones that are really tricky to identify. And this is where so many victims fall into a place where they just aren't prepared for this person, because they're not what they saw on television. They're not this grandiose person. They might be very quiet and meek. They're usually very smart, and they use tactics that are different. The passive aggressive behaviors are silent treatment, gaslighting, reactive abuse, playing the victim. And so when someone is like seeing this, that they're playing the victim, the narcissist is playing the victim, but the person listening to that has empathy for them. They go, oh, you poor thing, you've been through so much. And that's sort of building the persona of the entrapment, if you would, of the victim. Again, malignant narcissists are the higher scales. The difference between these and some of the other ones is that they actually learn from the tactics that they use, and they improve. Some of the lesser, like the coverts, they're almost in a hamster wheel. Same thing, same tactics over and over. The man who had me arrested, I found out that he had had his wife arrested 4 times and 1 other girlfriend in his life. So he just learned the tactic and just kept on doing it, right? But a malignant is going to go, I'm going to learn from that. And they test it and they push even harder. Someone dealing with this is dealing with someone that will go to no end to not only destroy them, but hurt them. I wanted to talk about the rich narcissists because if you're dealing with one, their sense of entitlement because of this financial success is what is going to drive this truck. They feel like they're entitled. They will go to any length to destroy their victim. The money comes with power, and they often accuse their victims of being with them because they're gold diggers. They want them for their money, and that wasn't ever part of it. But it becomes this dialogue that isolates the victim by everyone thinking, oh, you were just out there for their money, when you've been married to them for 25 years and like they were poor when you met them. But it's the dialogue that ends up hurting the victims. So important to know the wealthy ones will be like rabid dogs attacking even more furiously than some of the other ones. We have this whole category, and again, it's not normally talked about, but in my work and the people that I deal with, the poor narcissists are the ones that are so much like a con artist. They literally like pick people out for their assets, and they abuse them, and they wiggle their way into their hearts. I have a little story with this one, and ironically, the man presented himself as somebody of great stature. He had just moved into this victim's town, and he was a movie producer from the other side of the country. They met, instant soulmates, instant love. Oh my goodness. 2 months later, they were married. But before they married, he said, well, I don't have a bank account here. I don't know why he couldn't have opened one, but why don't you put me on your bank account? So the girl puts him on the bank account. It's a scam, right? This is what we're talking about with the poor ones. It's a scam where she put him on the thing, and then 2 months later, they're married and they go to buy a house. Well, he didn't have money for the deposit, so she put it down. 2 months later, they're in a divorce process when I meet her. And the bottom line is that because she put that deposit down from a joint account, he was now going after the deposit as half of being his, half of the house he fought for. The divorce took over a year. Know each other for 2 months, married for 2 months, and a year to fight for her money. She was targeted because she had assets, and he went after it. This is what happens with the poor ones. I hear it every day, particularly with older women. I don't hear it as often with men, but I hear it a lot with women in their 50s and 60s who might have already had a divorce and are restarting again, and they have some assets, and then they get targeted by this poor narcissist, or at least someone pretending to be poor just to get them for their assets. So that's the beginning of this world. Now, here's the part that many people don't understand. Narcissists create a false persona to trick the victim into thinking They're everything that they're looking for. They actually build this role based on the dialogue and the introduction and what they're looking for. If you're looking for someone that rides horses and likes dogs with a blue eye, like, wow, he had a dog with a blue eye too. It's so perfect. Oh my goodness. I love riding horses. I love doing everything you do. They build this mask and this fake persona to hook the victim. It's all a lie. And it traps them. They become instant soulmates, right? So the different masks are charming, right? We all see these charming people, these charming masks. They can come off with this generous mask. They're so generous. They give everybody everything. It's actually sort of more like buying people. The privileged mask, the vulnerable mask, the rescuer, they're always here to rescue you. So if you're that widow that lost her husband, they're going to rescue you. If you're the one that is afraid to take care of yourself financially, they're going to rescue you. They can put on a spiritual mask and pretend that they're spiritual when they actually never go to church or do the things, but they are using that spirituality to kind of elevate themselves because you trust them more, you believe them. When we get into parenting, a narcissist can create this perfect parent mask where everybody is thinking like the soccer coach. Oh my goodness, they're the best. They're so good with our kids. And they get in the car with their own kid and they start yelling and screaming at them. And because they missed the goal or something, that the perfect parent is in public. All of these masks are what gets shown in public. And to the victim, my husband was the charming mask. He actually called himself Prince Charming and told everybody, introduced himself that way. And everyone thought, oh, he's the nicest, most wonderful person. But it was funny, as soon as the door closed, he wasn't that guy anymore. And, he would justify it saying, well, I can't be on all the time. And I didn't realize on meant a mask, but that's what it really meant. And I had to learn that, right? So the thing that we need to understand as those of you that are therapists and social workers is we don't need to actually, I do have a rubber stamp, bunk, right? We don't have to stamp them with the word narcissist, right? But we need to teach our people the patterns, the cycle, the behaviors, and lead them to resources so that they can be validated to what they're experiencing. If we are labeling them, and I know it, and we'll get into another side later, I know you can't really label someone who's not in your room, but if we don't validate or at least point them in the right direction to get this information, then we're doing them a huge disservice. So there are cycles of abuse. So there are, and it's not linear. So it's cycles, and it could be like idealize, devalue, and the discards are the three stages. And idealizing is usually met at the beginning with love bombing. This is a term, I'm sure none of you have it in your journals, but if your people on your, in your chair are coming there, they're hearing these words. And that's why I wanted to give you this NARC glossary, because they come in and go, word salad, or ready, I have another prop, flying monkeys, right? If they come in and say, oh, the flying monkeys, and you have no idea what it means, it's not helping them. So learning their vocabulary of what they're learning in books and what they're learning on YouTube and on podcasts is vital for you to be able to validate what they're going through. So love bombing is that stage when you are better than sliced bread. Everything you do is perfect. Most narcissists declare their love very quickly. They also declare we're soulmates or twin flames, and they demand time from the victim. At first, it's like they can't get enough of them. It's every single day. And they're just sitting there building and building on this trust, but they're also at that same time, isolation starts, where they're isolating you from your friends. You were going to go out with your friends, but, oh, can't we do something tonight? Oh, please, we're so perfect. I miss you so much. And they give up their friends or their family, and things start to isolate them, right? The other part of the beginning is the future faking. This is where victims get so hooked into like the promises, like we're going to get married. Oh, we're going to have a house just like that. They start to talk about our house, our stuff, and they've only known you for 2 months, right? If I look at the guy, the dating guy for me, boy, it was so fast. And I was the best thing. No one had ever been so wonderful and kind to him. And I believed it. So I fell for it. The other word you have to understand here is what we call supply. Narcissists use people for supply. And it can be like the rich one, you know, the poor narcissist, using them for their money. They come in, they're coming for the money, but it could also be for status. If they want to elevate themselves, they could be using someone for their status. I will tell you a brief story about, we'll call him 3X. That's the jail dude. When I first met him, I had a marketing company. I've had a marketing company for 26 years. And he comes into the picture and, oh, his ex-wife had taken all his money. So he was trying to make extra money, and he took $10,000 from 3 people to make a website for them. But he didn't know how to make a website, and he spent the money and didn't have any way to make it. So who gets trapped into making their websites for free? I made 3 websites for these clients of his just so he wouldn't go to jail. I was a really good supply. I also then became his child's babysitter, and he would get his work schedule and go, oh, I'm going to be gone, babe, from, you know, Monday to Wednesday. Can you watch my son? And I'd be like, sure, give up my life, move my computer, move my entire life, and go babysit his kid. So we're all used for supply. The one that he was cheating on me with at first, that I went there to forgive him for, she was a mediator. He was having difficulties in his marriage. Supply. He needed a mediator, so he dated one, right? The third girl who was in his driveway the day of my arrest, I didn't know her until that point, and she was a nutritionist, and she was a massage therapist that gave him a massage every single day. And so he was building his services by dating people. And at that point, he was juggling all 3 of us. So none of us knew the other ones existed. And the last one, the massage therapist person that I met on the day of my arrest, ended up being like a sister to me, and spending 3 months, she was from Australia, spending 3 months with me twice for 2 years in a row. And the third year we went to Italy on our bucket list, right? After she broke up with him, we became really good friends. So there was some like light at the end of the tunnel there. But again, I wanted to explain what the supply is. They're using people for something. That's important to know. When we get into the devaluing stage, it happens without anybody really knowing it. It just all of a sudden, what you say isn't right. And I can't believe you're doing that. You know, why do you always have to be so negative? And like, they loved you yesterday, but all of a sudden they're just sitting there picking on little things and sort of devaluing everything about you. Yet yesterday you were the best thing since sliced bread, right? They use gaslighting tactics, triangulation, and the flying monkeys, as I said before, are when they use people to do their bidding. That's why it was named. I don't know who coined the phrase, but it's out there. It's basically triangulating 3 people. So you and his ex-wife. So it's him, I'm using my example, me and the ex-wife. If he's telling me all these terrible things, she's a witch and she's a goblin and she's a terrible, terrible person, what's happening is I don't ever want to talk to her. I'm never going to go to her to find out the truth. I don't want to be anywhere she's going to be. So he's helping himself isolate. Flying monkeys are all, oh, that's triangulation. So it's sort of putting all the pieces. My mother used to triangulate me and my sisters. And parents do this to keep the siblings apart, because together you're stronger. When you are the weak link and you're taught to never love your siblings, that you have no support system. So it's intentional. When we get into the discard stage, there's a term that I wanted you guys to know, which is called narcissistic injury. This is where the narcissist sort of flips to the splitting, the black and white thinking. Something happened. Maybe you called them out on something. Maybe you tried to set a boundary. Maybe you just said, why did you say that? You're asking them questions. and they realize, oh no, the gig is up. So this narc injury turns them to black and white thinking. And this is where they already start to plan the discard, the leaving. Ghosting is a big one in the discard stage. The person who had to see you every single day, every single minute, texting you every morning, all of a sudden they start off where, oh, it was 24 hours where they ghosted you. And you're like, where'd he go? Oh no. And the reality is that they're doing something else. They're building their next stage of the life. They're probably dating someone else. They're moving on. And this ghosting just happens where the victim, I've had people like married with children, and their husbands just go away for 2 weeks without ever telling them where they are. And then the mother is like, where are they? It's a horrible situation, right? Reactive abuse is where they are pushing the victim to like get angry. They're baiting them and they're hitting them with all of this stuff. And the victim is sitting there going, ah, and then finally they react, and the narcissist records it and then goes and tells everybody, see, I told you she was angry. She's crazy. And it was the first time the victim actually ever yelled or spoke back up. No contact is something that we'll talk about later, but this is when the discard stage, this is the safest thing for victims. The only way to heal is to go no contact and get them out of their life. Now, sometimes in family situations, you can't go no contact. So low contact or protected contact with a family that you have to interact with is going to be best. And, protected contact is where, if you are going to your family for Thanksgiving and your mother's the narcissist, is that you've always got your husband there. You're never alone with the narcissist, because the narcissist doesn't like to do this abuse in front of other people. So by having that person almost like a bodyguard at the wedding or at your children's graduation, you've got someone to protect you. So at least you're not being abused. So those are the stages. That's the glossary. And I want to kind of look at some of this, how it like affects the victims, because when they are gaslighted, they feel confused, controlled, blamed, and powerless. When they are ghosted, they feel unloved and forgotten. So we're internalizing these things, even if we don't know the names of what it is. We just know that ghosting hurts and we're so sad. The victim is going to be crying and hysterical. They don't understand why they're doing this to them. And those are some of the things that they feel. When they are given the silent treatment, they feel ignored, disrespected, invalidated. Projection, they're frustrated and not heard. Financial abuse is such a big part of narcissistic abuse. It is to the point where, my divorce, as an example, we were fighting over $50,000 profit on our house, and I was going to get 25. My divorce cost me $100,000. With all of those false allegations, I was financially ruined. I had to tap into my 401k to pay lawyers. It was just ridiculous. Financial abuse can start earlier than a divorce, where the victim is not allowed to have access to the finances. They're given a budget for food. I have one girl that story is in my book, where if she bought more than $50 worth of groceries a week, then she was sent back to the store, and she had 4 kids. So she had to really work on that, and she just wasn't allowed. It was how he controlled her. The ironic part was that when she did go for the divorce, she found out they were millionaires, and her divorce, again, this is a woman who didn't have 50 cents in her own bank account. Her divorce cost $1.1 million to fight on her side alone. So that is financial abuse. Like, to sit there and like live in starvation your entire 26 years of marriage, and then find out, oh my gosh, we're millionaires. Like, none of it added up for her. But in the end, she did okay, and she's free. Isolation is what makes the victim feel lonely. When they have taken away your friends, taken away your family, they started off so slowly, but eventually the victim is just like, I don't have any friends. I couldn't talk to them for years. So they're like isolated and alone when it comes time to heal. And when they start to learn about this, again, it doesn't help your healing if you've got no one to talk to. Narcissists are huge liars. Like, I have a line in my book that if their mouth is moving, they're probably lying. And they built this false persona right from the beginning. That was the lie, right? That started it, and we fell for it. But the victim will feel blamed and powerless and betrayed. Boundaries, they love to break boundaries. They just don't let the victim set any. And so they feel disrespected, they feel unloved. But this hook of the love bombing comes back in when someone is upset. Then the narcissist comes right back and turns on the love bombing, and the victim goes, oh, that's the person I remember. I want that person back. And they forgive them for all the other things they've done. So there we go. These behaviors are intermittent, and they're usually missed, as I said, with that love bombing. And then they go, oh, that's the person. But the victim slowly becomes the frog in boiling water. You've heard that analogy where, like, if you put a frog in cold water and slowly turn up the heat, they don't even know they're going to boil to death. And that's what happens, is the victim is in there and it's slowly happening to them. And then they get intermittent reinforcement, which keeps them trauma bonded. And the victim is waiting for the good guy to come back. And I'm sorry, I keep saying guy. Again, our percentages are lots of males and more female victims. In my support group, I would say we have a 20% male enrollment. And so that's why I just keep going that way. But again, men or women can be victims. So forgive me when I say he. All right, so as we look at this one, I just picked some of the things that people very quickly relate to them. They can always do it or hardly ever do it. It can be all the time. It could be just a little bit. So they could lie all the time. They could be yelling. This is the part, is some victims go, he never yelled. In fact, I say to this day that until my husband asked for a divorce, we never fought. We just didn't. It was out of the blue, completely blindsided. And I was like, oh, he doesn't yell. Oh, I didn't even know what gaslighting was. I didn't think he was lying. And I certainly didn't think he was cheating, but all of them did apply in the end. So again, rarely, and this is why you need to know this, because your clients are going to have this cognitive dissonance of, no, it can't be that. It can't be that because they don't yell. They don't do this. They're not arrogant. You have to know it's a spectrum. And I have a slide on here about how the victim presents, right? So again, you're going to get angry, anxiety, confusion, CPTSD and PTSD. If they have been like me, not knowing that the entire life I had been in an abusive situation, the CPTSD kicks in there. They can be depressed, they can't concentrate. The ones I have highlighted in brown are kind of from the PTSD spectrum, but they are dealing with this helplessness and hopelessness, and they don't know what to do. They need you to like get in there. They're not going to know how to sleep. I put a post up in my Facebook group. It's got to be like 3 or 4 years ago. And I said, did anyone like ever think about killing themselves over this? Because I had seen something else. And within about 15 minutes, 400 people were showing us their slit wrists, talking about how they wanted to kill themselves over this. This is like where they have lost all their power. They have lost the will to live, and they don't see a way out. If they've been with someone for a long period of time, a long marriage, 10, 15, 20, 30 years, they don't know how to be on their own. They don't know how to start again. So the fear just creeps in, and they just don't know. So sometimes ending their life seems like a good idea. Thankfully, there is help out there. We don't have to let them get that far. But if they can present with any of these things, you'll see that they are a victim, right? And, victims are not able to emotionally regulate themselves. They've lost their sense of purpose. They have dissociation. They've got lots of shame, lots of guilt. And they feel like they're permanently damaged. They also feel like they'll never trust again. That's a huge one. Is like, how do I trust? I trusted this person. I was married to them for so long, or it's my mother. How will I ever trust again? So those are the things that you'll see that are going to present of how they act. When we look at this, I have these stages of recovery. And again, I think we need to understand this because they come to you in different stages. And for those of you that are survivors that are out there, you'll recognize some of these as well, right? You come in and they could be in the very beginning where they are just learning about this, like me. Oh my God, what did this mean? Who are this? What, I didn't even know this existed. And then they're hurt, they're confused, that the betrayal is overwhelming. There's a lot of cheating that goes on. I have a video, my most popular video on YouTube, which I won't even watch. So I'm not saying go watch it because it's so old, I'm scared of it, but it has almost 400,000 people have watched it, and it's on cheating. And I'm just like, that shows you how many people are betrayed and with the cheating. So it is an important factor to understand that, you know, if there was a flag of the person, they're narcissists potentially cheating on them, there's something behind it. There may be, right? They also end up being angry at themselves, angry at the narcissist. They have abandonment issues. They have loneliness, depression. In this very first stage, they are hiding their story. They're afraid to say it. When they do say it to people, their friends and family tend to think they're crazy because they're just reciting, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and you do sound crazy. Everything about it is like, absolutely, I went by too many. I don't know how to go back. Uh-oh, back. That beginning stage is overwhelming for them. When they get into the survivor state, they are able to like talk about it. They'll have the words, they'll have this dialogue, they'll understand what happens. They'll start to, be able to grieve. They're usually not ready to forgive at this point, and they're going to start to rebuild their lives. They're starting to get back to self-trust. They're starting to learn boundaries. They can still have depression, a lot of trigger-based reactions to things. I call something in my book the first year of firsts. After you've been divorced, the first time you have your anniversary, the kids' birthdays, the holidays without the kids, you're going to get triggered back into the depression, the sadness, the hopelessness. So those are kind of where you go. But these victims that are now survivors are really aware of the narcissist's behaviors. And it's like that movie, they see them everywhere. And this is a part where, it makes it really hard for the victim to feel safe because they're seeing it in their boss and, oh my gosh, the neighbor. And all of a sudden you're looking at them and going, you think everyone's a narcissist? But they're seeing it, so they're identifying behaviors. At this point too, they often have to clean house of friends and people in their life that they didn't realize were also abusive. It's just part of the deal. It's part of this discovery, but you will see them. Like, I see narcissists everywhere. They are just in this place where, they've learned the terminology, and they often over-diagnose everybody because they're just hyper vigilant about it. It's not that they are narcissists. It's just like one person doesn't listen to a boundary and they stamp them with the label, and they're trying to kind of work their way out. They will work out of that later, but in this stage, it's almost a self-protection, and they're just being hyper aware. This is my definition of a Sur Thriver. And this is someone who is like ready to get back in the game. I'm not going to read it because it's obviously really long, those of you that can see it. But they give back. This is where they have come out the other side, and they go and educate. They go and teach. They go and help. Just like my admins in my Facebook group, most of them have been out of that funnel of pain, but they still get on Facebook and help people every single night. These are Sur Thrivers that are out there doing the work to teach people and educate them. So this is what we want people to be. We want them to go back and become a Sur Thriver, but they've got to go through it. And this is sort of swirling, right? They're going to keep on going around and around until they get to the place where they can give back, where they've been tested, they know what a boundary is, and they've actually tested people, and they've learned to kick people out of their life when they see the behaviors, right? At first we see them, and that stage we just saw, and they freak out, they run away, and they're not going to like engage with those people. In this stage, they see it and they go, I don't want them in my life. And they have the power and the strength to, like, no matter how good this person looks on paper, to say, I'm protecting myself. You lied to me 5 times. I know what that's gaslighting. I don't want you in my life. They're strong enough to have that. And it takes some courage to certainly do that. So I wanted to put this slide in here because most victims, and again, I did my little survey in my group last week in the Boulder Library, and mostly everybody, I think there was one person there that was just there singularly, no other narcs but her parents. And of the other 20 something people, everybody who had been in a relationship raised their hand that they had a tie to their family. I would say 80%, and this is not a medical number, but 80% of the clients that I work with have been in an abusive relationship, have a tie. Either they've been in this rodeo before with another partner, or it was a family tie. Because what happens is we normalize the crazy. It's just normal. For me, I have a line in my book that ghosting was my family like vacation. It was like, that was just so normal. Who wasn't speaking to anyone? It was just part of the deal. So when I get into a relationship with that, that's just normal. Oh, they'll be back, no worries, right? And so that's how they become better bait. And what we need to know and understand is that when you're dealing with a narcissistic person that is out scouting for supply, scouting for someone to be in their life, our story that we tell, or the victim's story that we tell, sort of gives the clues. Remember, the narcissist is building this persona based on what you say. So our story is, oh my goodness, my husband cheated on me 9 times, but I stayed because I'm a Christian and I believe in God and I believe in love and giving chances and forgiveness. And I think I'm telling a hero story. I'm like, yay, I'm a good person. See, but the narcissist literally has a green flag under the table going, oh, I can cheat and she'll stay. Awesome. Oh, she forgives people. Oh, and then they ask you questions like, so tell me about your family. Do you guys see each other a lot? And in my case, no, I have a crazy family. And, oh, she's isolated. Awesome. I can take her down. She's the weak antelope running across the field because she's got no support. So our story is giving them the clues to what they're going to be able to take advantage of us with. So family tie. Sorry, I got on that tangent, but it's really important to know how it ties in, because I went to a therapist, and I know I have that on a slide here, and we'll get to it in a second, but I'm throwing it in here now. I went to a therapist in Boulder through my divorce, through the 2.5 years of being with this boyfriend dude. And when I found out after jail and said, I just found out I think he's a narcissist. What do you know about this? And my therapist looked me in the face and said, yeah, well, they like to look in the mirror. That's what I was dealing with and paying for week after week for 4 years. And I didn't know any better. He actually treated my my mother in the hospital before she passed. Like, again, he had exposure to the narcissist, the queen in my life, right? And yet he never picked it up because he didn't know. So that was a huge disadvantage for me. Had someone actually said, look this up, even if you're not diagnosing, go get this book. You might find it helpful. And when I get people on my screen and my clients whose therapist said, I want you to look this up. This is something you need to know and look at it. They're so grateful that the therapist, while they might not have known enough to help them, they know enough to say, get this book, do this, help them. So the journey of the adult child of a narcissist, their lives are destroyed. They are, again, sort of like people pleasing, and they are groomed all through childhood to take this abuse. Again, the ghosting in my family, just normal, right? Yelling, normal. Throwing plates, normal. So when my husband didn't throw plates or yell, I was like, I'm not with an abuser. The reality was, it was that covert type. The narcissistic parent only cares about themselves, and they're unable to show any empathy for their children. And, the child ends up either becoming, if you have a narcissistic parent, and this is how the narcissists are sort of, born, if you would. It's not a technical term, so don't quote me on that. But, when we have a narcissistic parent, or we have that injury in our life, you can either go to the people-pleasing, coping, codependent kind of person, and then be the victim, or you can become the narcissist as a protective mechanism. Nobody's going to hurt me. I'll show them. So understanding that the parents are going to have no empathy for the child, they need help, because if they don't get it, they are going to repeat the patterns. The children are neglected. I had a thing in my family, children are to be seen and not heard. That was just what we had. That was my family mantra. But when they had guests over, we were expected to show up in our pretty little dresses and stand there like we were some sort of show meet. But that was our family. So it got used to being, shown off, if you would. But it's the way it is, right? Parents, let me just take a sip of water. They neglect their children and only cater to their needs. They're, again, the spectrum of how the children are treated. You can have children that are like the parent's slave, doing all the work for them, or they completely ignore them and they are absolutely left on their own. I did a video recently with an abandonment expert, and we were talking about how, again, I lived in a very affluent Connecticut town, house on the water, summer houses, yachts, that sort of thing. And everyone thought we were the perfect family. But behind closed doors, no, it wasn't like that at all. My parents would go on their boat for the summer. I think the first time they did it, I was 14, my older sister was 16, and we had a 13-year-old. And they would just leave us for the summer with a freezer full of dinners. Again, this is in the 70s, so it's a long time ago, but and then all their friends. I was recently at a funeral for my mom's best friend's husband, and everybody at the yacht club back in Connecticut was like, your mother loved you girls so much. Oh, she was the best mother ever. And I'm like, that is so not, that was the public face. That wasn't how our life was. That wasn't how we lived. We were there to fend for ourselves. It was just, again, we're very wealthy, but we got $75 worth of clothes for the season of going back to school. And that was it. And so it was just sort of this, you're not important enough. And the message that the kids get are, I'm not good enough. And so often they settle later on. Parents can be jealous and competitive. If you just got an award, they'll remind you, oh, I did something when I was younger. They're not even giving you credit for it. They steal the spotlight. If it's your birthday party, your wedding, your celebration, they're going to try to steal the light. And again, Tracy's got a story. Barry told me to do this. So if you're annoyed by it, I'm sorry. He's like, tell personal stories. So I'm going for it. But during my wedding, my mother, I'm at the top of the stairs about to walk down the aisle, and my mother, oh, I think I'm going to faint. And it was all an act. She fainted. The wedding stopped. Tracy went back up the stairs. The whole entire wedding, everyone just surrounded my mom. Are you okay? Are you okay? So she was getting her attention, and I'm the bride, and I'm like, okay, whatever. That's how they steal their attention. They use name calling, and they always divide siblings. So, one of the things that you'll see is this lack of a really true good support system, because they're pitted against each other. Again, together you're stronger against them. When you are divided, then the narcissist can play games and rotate, who's the favorite, the golden child, the scapegoat. It just keeps getting rotated through. And that's very confusing for the child, that one day is the golden child and the next day their parents are being cruel and abusing them. So it can manifest in so many different ways. But for me and my two sisters, I became the people pleaser. When I was growing up, I was sort of the screw up. You either get my two sisters were be the really good ones in school and try to please mom and dad that way. I went the opposite way, which I think is how I survived. Everyone has always told me, how come you're so normal? And again, normal is a relative word looking at my life now, but I wasn't the screw ups that my sisters were. Even though they were always trying to please, they could get a 98 on their test. And my mother would be, why isn't it 100? Or I could get a 60, and they would just be like, well, that's just her. Nobody going, Tracy, you're dyslexic. That's why you can't read. Oh my goodness, no one ever did that, because that means they would have had to like actually cared, right? The person who has this, the mothers are critical, the fathers are critical. There's often physical abuse too. So, those are kind of the symptoms and the things. So when we get into trying to understand what the victim's needs is validation. They need community, those Facebook groups, local groups like mine. There are some online groups. I have friends in different states that run just adult children of narcissist group. Get them into a place where they're going to find that community, because when they get the validation of I'm not alone, because all their friends are thinking they're crazy and they feel alone. So when they go, oh, that happened to you too, and I don't have to explain all this to somebody, it helps them heal so much. So their education is going to be your big thing. They're going to need grief work, because they're grieving. If it was a marriage, they're grieving the dream. They're not only grieving the end of a marriage, they're grieving everything about their life. My life was a lie, is what I hear every single day. And so they've got to grieve that. Mindfulness here and now, let's like recalibrate our skills. We have to learn to set better boundaries, because that was what made us really good narc bait. I didn't know what a boundary was. So I would just sit there with my head confused going, what? And now I have a boundary course that's been taken by thousands. So we also deal with abandonment issues. Like abandonment is obviously much more than just mommy and daddy leaving. It's the neglect, it is the abuse. And so that is the same wound. And they have to start to see that there's going to be a future, that there's hope, because when they start off, they are hopeless. They don't know, and they don't see how they're going to start their life again. So it gets to be very, very hard for them. This one is the challenges on the mental health community, right? The education that they get, as Dr. Romney, and I'll hold her book up in a little while, who is a professor at UCLA, says you learn like personality disorders for 2 weeks. That's it. And it's not like, it's sort of the DSM. It's like here, they have no empathy. Well, it doesn't show you how no empathy manifests in the victims, right? But that's one of the problems. The therapists are also taught not to talk about people outside the room, right? You're not going to hold up a little stamp and say, oh, they're a narcissist, right? You can't do that. But if we can like start to, teach them again, lead the horse, or give a man a fish, or teach him to fish, you teach them the resources so that they can start to put the pieces together. Couples counseling is never recommended for anybody with a narcissist. And again, is the therapist going to know that they're a narcissist? Hopefully you'll be able to pick it up sooner than later. But inexperienced therapists are often charmed by the narcissist, or they believe the victim mask. They come in and, oh, woe is me. And the inexperienced therapist listening to just that side could recognize the behaviors and call out the narc. If they call out the narc, which is what happened when I took my husband to therapy, they were like, I'm not going back there. They don't know what they're talking about. And so it either goes where the therapist like sides with them, or gets charmed by them. I wouldn't say sides with them, but is charmed by them and can't see past this mask that they're putting on in public. And the victim just sits there squirming, going, that's not how they are. This isn't the person I'm here for. It becomes this whole act. And it's really hard for the victim to get validated in couples counseling. So it's always recommended that each person get their own, and you'll watch that the narcissist will go 2 or 3 times and then never go again, because they're cured. There's nothing wrong with me, because they've conned and tricked and charmed the therapist into thinking that they're perfectly normal. So then the victim goes, well, what's happening then? And of course, therapists can't diagnose. They will diagnose the client going, oh, you have PTSD. Oh, you've got this, but not how the narcissistic abuse syndrome, which is what Dr. Romney is trying to put in the DSM-5, is manifesting in them, right? we have to look at not to just diagnose with what you're depressed, you've got anxiety, you've got this. That's pretty normal for the diagnosis, because we present with that. We come in with anxiety, we come in with sleeplessness, we come in with depression. And so we're looking at that, but we're not seeing the picture of how all these pieces got us depressed, got us full of anxiety. That makes sense? So when it comes to your role, I have a picture of my red flag checklist here. I'm going to have my website, and we've already said it, but I'm going to have my website at the end here. But I have this red flag checklist. This is only page 1, and I have it in Spanish. It's been downloaded 17,000 times, and people just sit there and like, I have a therapist in my online group right now, and she's like, Tracy, I was in such denial about my 35-year marriage until I read your red flag checklist. And I have so validated that I had to make changes in my life. Like, learning and looking at this, it's a kick in the face to go, oh my God, they do that, they do that, they do that. Oh no, right? But getting them to some kind of resources is going to be the most important thing. If you don't become educated and understand what gaslighting is, for example, then you're going to hear these stories, and without ever saying that's gaslighting, you'll validate what they're feeling and you'll help them the way that you can. But by telling them that's gaslighting, then they become hyper aware and can learn about that and then stop that from happening again. Because if you're in it and you just think that was weird, I don't know why they said that, why do they always do that, we have to understand and be able to identify what gaslighting is, what all these terms are. Then you have to lead them. You have to be the Sherpa to information. And for those of you who are therapists, again, I'll hold up her book now because I've said it like 10 times. Dr. Ramani is, she goes by Dr. Ramani. That's her true on name. This happens to be one of her 3 books. It's also monstrous. And if you get onto her mailing list, she started it probably early last summer. She has therapist seminars. They're $50. They're 2 to 3 hours long. And she educates you on how the victim presents, what to do. And then she also has these seminars for victims. So every other month it's for therapists or for victims. Again, she's a professor of this and really smart. So getting onto her list is going to help you more than just going to, Psych Central and Psychology Today. You need to read and learn and understand that. But getting into that is like and she's going for certifications. So for those of you who need the continuing ed credits and stuff, she's going for that. And so sooner than later, she will have had those where that can be part of your continuing ed. So we have to understand that everything about this so that we can validate the people. I'm almost done, I promise, guys. I said 1 hour and I'm really close. Pointing them to the right resources. I literally keep a spreadsheet on my computer, and I have videos that I show and I share with people after I coach them. All YouTube people, when they go out there, are not created equal. For those of you that really want to get into the mind of a narcissist, I'm going to share this person's name. And I had my group that met last night online. The week before, I said, here's a video from this guy on that topic. I want you to go watch it. His name is H.G. Tudor, and he is a known narcissist. His YouTube channel is called Knowing the Narcissist. Put in H.G. Tudor. He talks about our kind. It is creepy to listen to, but when all the girls got into the group last night, some of them binge watched him all week. They were like, oh my God, I finally understand what's in their mind. He's explaining, when you do this, we do this. And our kind he talks about, and it's fascinating. It's a little creepy and a little scary. But not all YouTubers are created equally. Some are therapists, some are coaches like me, some are victims just like, and my husband did this and my husband did that, and oh my God. And if your person is watching that kind of stuff, what's happening is they are re-triggered and re-triggered. The people that came to the Boulder group last week, I said, you know what? Like, you've been coming, we haven't even met in 18 months. You guys have been coming to my group for years. Stop watching videos on narcissists. Move off of that wagon and move towards the healing videos and TED Talks. I have a lot of TED Talks when it comes to giving them resources on courage, on starting again. Things like that are going to help them. But if you don't have the resources to give them, they're going to go out there and they're going to find the wrong ones. You don't get help in education necessarily on TikTok, but a lot of people are doing it. And they're just like, I learned this on TikTok. Well, some of it might be true, some of it not be. So leading them to the right information, leading them to Psychology Today. I have an article, actually it's from Mind Journal, that when I teach my gaslighting class, I make everybody go and read this. It is just an amazing article. It's like a whole book, if you would. But if you want to know about that, here's the article. Share that resource, give them that and point them to this. You want to educate them on how to set boundaries, because again, our vulnerabilities were that we didn't say no. We didn't think we could. We didn't have that voice. So teaching them how they do it, how to move on. And again, journaling is such an important part of this, getting it out of their head. The rumination that happens to these victims is overwhelming. They can find that they are just, the thoughts just keep coming and haunting them. So they stop eating, they stop like sleeping. Everything about them is in this hypervigilant state. And so teaching them to, when you're in one of those states and you can't sleep, instead of rolling around or watching YouTubes all night, calming strategies, watch this meditation, listen to this before you go to bed, and stop watching videos till 3 a.m. You're not going to sleep, right? Teaching them to journal. It sounds so elementary, but they are holding these thoughts in their head. So journaling is going to help them get it out. They have to learn radical acceptance. They have to come to terms with the things that they can't change. They can't change the narcissist. They can't love them better. They can't hold in there more. They have to see that this is something that they either have to learn to cope with. And there's certainly skills and things that you can help them or guide them to those resources if they are not going to leave their husband. A lot of people, and I keep saying husband, sorry. A lot of people can't leave their spouses. Some might not be able to financially be able to leave. Some are staying for the kids. So how do we teach them to cope with the situation? And that's teaching them communication skills. They're going to learn sort of a de-escalation strategy. And while I know these 2 books are not in my book list I have at the end, as there is a man out there, and I have his divorce book on my counter to show you guys, but his name is Bill Eddy. This is Biff. There's a red one. This happens to be the green version for co-parenting. It's how to talk to them, how to communicate with them, how to stop the conversations from escalating so that you can have a calmer life if you have to deal with them, right? BIF stands for brief, informative, firm, and friendly. So you keep the answers. Like, we just feel like if they're accusing of something, we've got to explain, I didn't do that, blah, blah, blah. But the reality is we don't need to provide that explanation. And when we're in a co-parenting situation, there's nothing better than that book. Oh, here's the red one. So this is just for high conflict people. And he did just make another one that is called EAR. I did a video with him about 2 weeks ago. So it's on YouTube. And EAR is empathy, acceptance. I don't remember the hell of them. But it's another way. And he built that because in this day of COVID and people, high conflict people, not wanting to wear masks and like just differences of opinions and political situations and things like that, we have to have a way to talk to high conflict people that de-escalates the situation. So he is the founder of the High Conflict Institute in California. He teaches lawyers. He goes and speaks at judge conferences. He's trying to educate people, and this is called high conflict in the family court system, right? So again, his communication skills and teaching that is something that you want to lead them towards. We didn't really talk about gray rock, but gray rock is one of the things before no contact. Gray rock is where you're maybe with them, but you're never giving them anything they can use against you. You're just never, telling them your whole story. You're giving brief, firm, friendly kind of answers to them so that it doesn't escalate. So gray rock is one of those tactics. And again, the communication skills that I just showed you some of those books. Where's my other one? Favorite. This one, I absolutely love it. It's the tiniest book on my shelf, and it's the closest for me to grab because I recommend it every day. This is because it's like not a big book like the Biff ones were. People can learn magic words, how to get what you want from a narcissist. And she has these little magic phrases. You're actually building the persona of what kind of person they are, what their fears are, and you're feeding into the fear with your reaction. I'll give you the example. Narcissists' top fear is that they want to be seen and heard. So in this example, we all have heard the "I hear you" kind of a thing, but this is the bottom line is, I hear you that, you're afraid our son will get bullied if he chooses drama over playing football. This is the part is, that's a fair point. Let me think about it. You're not giving them an answer. You're not saying, you're just like, let me think about that. You're like de-escalating it by letting them be heard, but still not really saying, yeah, we're going to do that. So this book, again, tiny little thing. She made it so it fits in your purse, really helpful. But when you can teach them to like deal with this in a different way, it's going to help. I pulled my top favorite books. Went backwards too far. Well, did that again. Sorry, every time I click on it, it happens. So as I said, Dr. Romney's book, Bible, like really, Don't You Know Who I Am? She has about 3 books, but if you're going to read one, this should be the one. This is about really just the living through the era of entitlement. And she writes beautifully. The other one is this is for healing the daughters of narcissistic mothers. I have lots of books up there on narcissistic fathers. Dr. Carol McBride is actually from ARVA, and she has created a thing. People become certified to be a Dr. Carol McBride therapist treating people, adult children of narcissists. And so she's got this whole phase 1, phase 2, people become certified in it. So to me, this is the Bible. And it's not an easy read. It's not something that people are going to just be like, oh yeah, no, this is like a destruction of everything you thought about your life, but it validates everything. It validates why, who, what, why, how. My book, again, it's due out in a few weeks for divorcing, but since it's not the other one that I have been referring to for years, is again, the Bill Eddie Biff guy, Splitting. And it is an attorney, a mediator, and a social worker, and the founder of the High Conflict Institute. So, he wrote this book with, I don't know if you've ever heard of Randy Krieger. She is the walking on eggshells, borderline personality expert. So that's a really good resource. For those of you who don't know the person on the end of the screen there, Jackson McKenzie wrote Psychopath Free. I think I listened to that on Audible 6 times when I was really like learning about this. Every word, I was like, oh my God, that's my life. Oh my God, that's my life. And so this book he wrote a few years ago is really how to heal, how to find yourself, rediscover, and start to build yourself with trust. I pulled out some extra books. Let me get those out of the way that I didn't have room for on the slide, because again, this is what I recommend to people every single day. It's like, wow, I just see this abandonment thing again. I'll, talk to them and sort of pick out what their wounds are and then direct them to where they need some help. Susan Anderson, who is to me, again, the abandonment expert lady. And this is a recovery workbook. Big, thick, lots of little spots people fill things in. They are doing the work by doing this book, and it's a big book and it's got a lot of helpful information in there. And when they do it, they can heal those wounds. They could start to look at things differently by not only reading along with it, but then like, answering those questions, filling it out. Really helpful stuff. The last book that I pulled out to share with you today is one that it's called the Gaslighting Recovery Workbook. Again, very big into workbooks. Lots of books I do recommend as well. But when somebody can sit there and dedicate, and I tell people when they get one of these workbooks, it's overwhelming. That thing is 400 pages. It's big. It's like scary. And you know, you dig into it and you get frozen from working on them. I encourage people to put it on their calendar, that just like they would to be in therapy with you or I, like that hour is, I'm going to do a workbook, whatever I get done in that, just like the Iron Chef, walk away, an hour's done, got to go. You've done the work. You're starting to put it in. You're starting to think through patterns so that you can learn to identify them and change. This gaslighting recovery workbook has things about boundaries, self-love, your vulnerabilities, learning about compassion. You know, there's so much in here that I think anybody is going to benefit from something like that. So the last slide, I'm pretty sure, is again, the resources. This is my website. It's got so much resources, I can't even tell you. There's 10 free ebooks that if you wanted to go on and pay for them on Amazon, you could pay for the same book, or you can come here and get the free ebook. So, you know, siblings, parents, co-parenting, a narcissist at work, your child, how to help a friend that is going through this. So I have all of these ebooks out there. We have a link to the Facebook group. We keep a movie list that people like to watch. If you have never seen Dirty John, there are 2 versions of it. You can ask your television, you can search for it. There is a documentary that's about 2 hours, and there is a series. And it is a true story, but it is so like, for so long, all the victims are like, we need, like, someone needs to make a movie about this. Well, this is the movie. And this is going to show you of a successful woman who got basically conned, kind of like that. He was the poor narcissist, although he was pretending to be a doctor. So the whole entire persona was fake. But when you watch that, like, you'll start to have an insight. We have a whole bunch of books, from the original gaslighting book, movies, to anything that comes out. People notify me, we add it to the list. We also keep a resource if you ever work with people that are not in our state, of meetup groups and support groups that are probably peer run or you know, therapist run, for all over the country. And then like people submit them from other countries as well. So we have a whole list of that. There's so much that they can get. If they're going through a divorce and they can't afford legal help, I've searched in every single state and found the resources to get them free legal help. It's just, there's just so much there. Again, leading them to that would find them on the group page to show where all the support groups are. And then you could lead them in and go, there's the Boulder one, there's the ARVA group, you know, get them into something like that. I didn't charge for them for almost 6 years, but this year, to help cover for the fact that I've been paying for Meetup for all these years, I'm charging people $10 for a 2-hour lesson. So, you know, it's making them accountable and making them sort of step up, like, I really want to do this. So I've moved to that model. So they aren't free for me, but most of the other ones that you can find out there are free. Again, go to Dr. Romney's site. Go to watch her videos if you want a more psychological perspective of it. She's amazing. For those that are going to go through custody battles, there is nothing worse than a custody co-parenting situation. Of all of the people that are victims of abuse, the abuse continues. If your kids are 5 years old, you've got to deal with them for 13 years, and they will sabotage. They will, turn the kids against you. Parental alienation. When I went to the Domestic Violence Coalition, I have 4 friends that they lost their children. And just didn't ever get to see them again. They were taken from them in the courts, and it's quite real and it's quite painful. So the woman on the bottom of the screen, Tina Swiffen, has a website called One Mom's Battle. She supports court battles, custody issues. She has an amazing handout that I don't think I'll be able to find, but you can find it on her website. It's called the Yellow Rock handout. Yellow rock is not a normal thing that we talk about. I just found it. But it is canned responses. Again, how do we communicate? It's just a free handout, but it's like ways to talk to them and say things and how to do it. again, leading them to this is going to help them be able to talk and communicate better. Again, she's trying to change the court system. The family court system is her big thing. They highlight a lot of custody issues where the, again, I'm using father, sorry, they were given joint custody, but then the father murders the children, like, and the mother was sitting there fighting, going, no, he shouldn't have them, he shouldn't have them. And the court system says, no, 50-50, that's good. And then they highlight the cases where the children have been murdered, and they have all the mothers that, you know, now huge advocates to make sure that this doesn't happen again. So that is the end. And I hope I educated you guys a little bit. I know we're open for questions now. Barry, have we got questions?
You're an encyclopedia, and this is easily a 3-day seminar, what you just presented. So I don't want to say anything more. I want to open it up to everybody because we're running short on time here.
Okay.
So let's go into questions, comments. People have been waiting and hanging in here.
Are they putting them in the chat too?
Nikki wanted a book title. Nikki, did you get the title you wanted? And also she wanted you to show a slide from the beginning.
Okay, so those were the ones that I was highlighting at first. You can take a picture with your camera too, guys. That might help you to just get, oh, I want to make sure I look at that, or at least read them for yourself. If you read them, you're going to be able to be much more helpful to the person with a narcissistic parent. That one, will I ever be good enough? I guarantee you, I have recommended it to 100 men and go, just change the fact that it says daughter and mother to you know, if you were the son of a narcissistic mom, it's the same pain. But there are books on just narcissists. What was the other thing that you wanted?
Nikki? Well, I'm looking at whoever has unmuted themselves. So Nikki and Ann, do you have something?
This is Anne, and I just wanted to share, I heard Carol McBride speak, and it was interesting. There were a number of men in the audience, and one gentleman did ask, are you going to write a book for this for men? And Carol said she hoped to get to that someday, that it obviously does happen, even though the book is written for daughters. Yeah, it's an excellent book.
It's an amazing book. And she came to our Boulder meeting once. And like we had standing room, we had like 20 people standing, and the library was really nice. She's got so much to offer. Thank you. Who else has questions?
Lena Bell suggested a song by The Who called Behind Blue Eyes, sung from the point of view of the narcissist.
Wow. Nice. I'll write that down. We've thought about songs. People have donated and put those and contributed, but I never had the energy to do it. All right, who has some more questions?
I have one more question, Tracy. Thank you so much for what you've shared. I have a client who definitely probably grew up with a narcissistic mother, from what I've learned, but one of her brothers is also narcissistic towards her, and it keeps her in this cycle where she's always stuck, you know, and she's always offended and she's always upset, and it brings back a lot from the past. I have not known about these workbooks, so I'm planning to recommend those to her. But can you identify a way that's more helpful to keep people more in the present?
Well, again, when they're dealing with the family, it's so difficult because it's usually compounded, like in this case with the brother as well. And so when you're dealing with that, there's no way out. We had a girl on my group last night that sister had her arrested the night before for being at her dad's house trying to help him after surgery, and the sister didn't like her there and called the police, and she went to jail. So it is a difficult situation when it's a family thing, but knowing what is your truth is part of it. Like they just become attached to the lies or the story that they've been hearing. So mindfulness, like here now, you're safe. They're, you know, and then learning to communicate better with them is going to help. Again, de-escalating the conversations, because if they say something and you react like a normal person would react and be like, that's not true, that I never did that, and you're fighting to let yourself be known, learn that you can change that. And now if you got 2 against 1, you're getting into a battle that you can never win. So no, de-escalating it and sort of being like, it's not worth the fight in many ways, because trying to prove to them that you didn't do what they're saying you did is futile. You're never going to win, but you're the one that's going to go home and not sleep at night, where they go home and sleep like babies.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's really about understanding and knowing their truth, because if they hold on to this, you know, our family's normal or anything like that, they're just going to get wounded and wounded again. They have to understand that this is what's happening and there's no changing them. So either you end up going no contact, or if you have to see them, then you keep it and you don't give them anything. You don't tell your mother that, you know, your son is in this class. You just give them no information that they can turn around and use against you.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Tracy, I found many of the slides to be so relevant to people with all kinds of difficulties, not just narcissism. There's kind of a stages of coping and surviving, or we go back to what our neural pathway defense system was growing up: fight, flight, freeze. And the suggestions you had for communication strategies, those books are unfamiliar to me. I don't know that they float around in the therapist circles. Maybe they do, and I'm just old and I don't know that the books are out there. But I do very much appreciate the resources that you shared, and the strategies that you're outlining and highlighting, I think would be apropos for many different situations beyond narcissism as well. So I just wanted to commend you for being able to do the hard work of outlining and organizing and pulling together all this wonderful information. It's really a gift that you have created for, and I'm sure you're helping many, many people now. So it's just great to see what your work's all about.
Thank you. And I think that's part of the challenge about Barry, is that they present and they look like other things. They come in and they might not know they're even being abused, but they've got depression, they've got anxiety, they've got this, they've got that, right? The core is the behaviors and identifying what the people in their life are doing. And if it's a relationship, even going back to what were your other relationships like, this, you know, again, the repeated pattern of this sort of abuse. If you don't know it, you are going to get another one, just like me from my husband to the boyfriend. Like that one literally was a psychopath. He was so crazy, and yet I was hooked in. Had I learned it along the way, but someone had said, well, what's your pattern and how'd this happen, Tracy? And, oh, your family's like this. Oh, 2 and 2 together. You have to look at this direction. And, you know, looking and just going, oh, they've got anxiety. It's like, what's in the story? Are they being gaslit? If they're being gaslit and, you know, constantly ridiculed all the time, their self-esteem goes down to be like this big, and they don't feel like they have a voice, and the fear takes over. There's so much that overlaps so many things, but knowing and going, yo, let's just look this up, is going to help them find some of the answers.
Good points that you're making, because oftentimes we as therapists see clients who think they're the problem or they're suffering because of all the reactivity, all the symptoms, like you were pointing out in one of your slides, with depression and low self-worth and so on. So for you to bring in this angle of healthy people are just caught in this kind of web of attack and abuse, a variation of abuse, fill in the blanks. I like that you had post-traumatic stress and complicated post-traumatic stress, which I think many people don't know what the C stands for or what that refers to. So I think rewatching this recording is going to be helpful to people as well. Good. To go into a different level. Let's see, more questions? I'm having a little trouble reading the chats here because it's so small.
Nikki's going for the button. I saw her move.
You gotta unmute yourself.
That's what happened when people are in my groups and they just like lean forward. I'm like, she wants to be called on. They're like, no, I didn't know. I was just blowing my nose. Sorry, Nikki. Did you have a question?
So we don't hear you.
We don't hear you.
Yeah.
No. Anyone else? Does anyone want to share that they have had this kind of client, the victim of a narcissistic abuse, and a challenge that they might have had with it? Are you guys familiar with the resources that I shared?
Mhm.
Yeah. No, some yes, some no. Again, if you know Carol's work, like this is the forefront of people that want to help adult children of narcissists. And she specializes in the moms, but it's the same pattern and the same recovery, the same way they feel. So always good to get to her and her work.
There's someone who wrote a comment. I'll leave out the name. It says, I look forward to getting into the workbooks. I'm
Mhm.
very thankful for your research, support work, and this presentation. So there's a
Thank you.
important.
Whoever that was, I'm really grateful for you too. There's so much out there, and it's when I had Bill Eddy, the splitting and Biff guy on my screen, he's probably in his 70s, and I had him on my screen twice now, and I was like, well, you've been doing this forever. Like, it just seems like I've only been doing it for 6 years. Like, it seems like when I started my YouTube channel there were 30, and now there's 5,000 people. And is it like more of an explosion? Is it changing? How is it? Why is it changing? And, you know, he's like, when I started, there were no books. There was no information. There was no guidance. There was no help. And so now there's so much. So the victims are being identified. They're coming out to get the answers. And so that's why there's this influx of awareness to it.
Well, I want to say I thought your presentation was fabulous, and I have also been totally personally involved in the situation, and I wish I'd had those resources years ago, but it was a wonderful presentation. I'm going to run out and buy your book when it comes out. I'm going to buy several copies and give it to other people.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Yeah, I think that's the key is all of these, for those of you with clients, grab the books, have them on your shelf, point them out and say, here's something you need to know. You know, you see the codependency like in them, and that be like, hey, read this book, go get this one. This is going to help you learn a little bit more. And when I'm thinking, and obviously with shit in the title of my book, you know, I definitely, you know, I'll be like, when we are in recovery, like you could be working with a therapist who's going to identify, wow, that's an abandonment wound. Let's work on that. You know, your self-worth, you're this, you're that. We've got to get you to these points where you feel stronger. But if you're self-propelling yourself through this recovery, I say it's like we throw shit at the wall. Oh, I just learned about codependency. Well, that wasn't about me. Let me throw this against the wall. Let me learn about that. Let me learn and heal that. I have like 10 books up there that are workbooks for PTSD. So there are lots of them out there. There's self-love, there's recovery. And you know what I like about and what people love about the workbooks is it goes along with their therapy. They're still seeing you once a week, but for the other 6 days, they could be dedicating time to go to the next level with whatever the wound was by studying it. Look at some TED Talks, and I have one on courage. It is called 10 Seconds of Courage. It's a TED Talk. And I hear it in my head whenever I have to pull out courage. That TED Talk is in my head. So if we can get them into a place where they are being inspired versus keeping stuck by listening to the narc stuff over and over. Oh, I just listened to a video about how they ruined vacations, and oh my God, all my vacations were ruined too. You are living in yesterday. You're not healing. You're looking at yesterday. Every time you watch, and you already know they ruined your vacations. Why are we watching it again and again, right? So if you can get them out of that loop and go heal, throw that at the wall, throw that at the wall. How are we going to get them to a place? Is giving them a book, letting them self-propel while they are waiting for your next appointment.
Tracy, what was that thing you just held up and took away? We didn't get a chance to see
My
it.
button,
Oh yeah, what does it say?
you can't make this shit up.
All right.
And I made that the subtitle of my book, because 3 people in one day all got on and said, you're not going to believe this. You can't make this up. And everybody, and it's like, I hear it probably 3 times a day, because what they're experiencing is their friends invalidating what's happening to them. And so they almost come in with that preface to kind of like warn you. It's like, you're not going to believe this stuff. And, eventually it's like, yeah, I heard that before. I've heard that before, because the stories, unless they are that more accelerated narc that's going to amplify and learn and create more destruction. If they're just the run of the mill, they're doing the same thing over and over and over. So you'll hear it with different faces, and you'll hear it with female narcs. For the men that are out there that are victims of this, they have such a harder journey. If it is a divorce situation with co-parenting, the woman takes the role of dutiful wife, and I'm the mother, and she wears this mask out there. And even if she like beats and yells at the children, she's got this sort of extra cred. She's the mother. So the fathers have such a more difficult journey of like trying to gain custody and see their kids, because they're being smeared. The lies about them are like so over the top that people don't even know what to do with their life. And when they smear you and they make false allegations in court, now you're having to defend yourself. I had to defend myself. I didn't steal any money. I had to do that. I had to spend all that money. And I don't know why we didn't just go, here's all the records. We did show them. Where did I steal anything? No, but I had to fight and beat that smear campaign and beat all of the false allegations. A dad has an even higher like hurdle. If they are the ones that are being abused, nobody believes them. They don't believe that the mom could possibly do the things that they're telling the stories about. So believe the men. But also there's lots of men that come out there and like pretend that they were the victim. That's a big thing. The parental alienation that Tina Swift in the last site that I gave you, her thing is parental alienation is the language of the abusers. They often, even though they're doing the alienating, they blame the victim, and now the victim's gotta like fight for their rights. So all of that.
Nikki was asking where we can watch the video. I just posted 2 links, one to the YouTube channel, the Interface's YouTube channel. I'll try to get it up there over the weekend or Monday. And then you can always go back to the Interface webpage that we have set up for this presentation. I'll be posting the link to the YouTube channel there. So I just put those 2 links in the chat area for anyone.
And also, if you guys are, I'm so honored to be a part and be talking to you all. And if you ever like have a question and you want to like, hey, this is the case, almost like a case consulting, like what would you do, or how do I lead this person, or things like that. I am a resource, and I help people all over the world that are going through this, as well as therapists. So, go to my website, pull down some of those red flags, hand them out to people and go, start with this, look at that. But there's also summits. Get yourself on some of the lists that announce these summits that are free for victims to go to. And you'll have a whole bunch of speakers that are going to help them heal in different directions. So knowing that those resources are there are going to change somebody's life. Okay.
I just put your website in the chat.
Thank you. Yeah.
And,
I
I'll
did.
put the Facebook group in the chat too, when I grab it in a minute here.
There you go. The Facebook group is so powerful because people are so alone, and they can just put on, oh my gosh, I don't know how to get away. You get them when they're coming in the hopper of trying to get away, not knowing how to get out. And then you get them when they want to heal after they figured it all out. So So they can come into you and present in any ways. The Sur Thrivers that have already been healed come into my Facebook group to give back. Like that's the power and the magic and like advice. And this is something I tried, or this is a great book, or watch this video. Sharing resources is how they're going to get healed, leading them to it at least.
That's an excellent point, that the community, especially during this time of COVID, where people are separated, isolated, and in this case, victimized and alone, and not knowing that there's other people out there that have similar experiences. That in and of itself can be a major part of the turnaround, to find the support and to feel some kind of connection when you're feeling so disconnected from your life and all the consequences of being with someone who's mentally ill or abusive.
Stephanie just said, great presentation, so thank you so much. Anyone else questions? It's like, ask the narc expert. It's such a title. I can't wait to go out and get, I am a narc expert, but it is a fact.
No
Jackie?
question, but just kudos on a great presentation. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you, Evie.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think it's amazing to me how much information there is out there now that wasn't out there before. And it's just so cool because I recently found myself in a situation that was with a person who was much different than the narcissist I was with many years ago. And so the red flags weren't lining up. And I just kept telling myself, oh, no, like, he's just this sweet, innocent person. And then, finally discovered Dr. Ramani and was watching some of her videos, oh, I had no idea covert narcissism was a thing. Had I known that a few years ago, that would have been amazing. So it is super, super awesome to have these resources.
Speaking of covert narcissist, this is the book. So the Covert Passive Aggressive Narcissist, this girl actually came to my support groups for a year and then took all that information, wrote the book. So, and again, it is sort of like the covert narc Bible. If you really want to understand the differences, I call it in my book, like the flavors of ice cream. Pink bubble gum and chocolate are not the same. And you might think that you knew what the pink bubble gum was and you thought that was what they were, but this one doesn't yell, he doesn't scream, she doesn't do this. They're so different. And again, they could be lying all the time or hardly ever. It's that public face being different than the image that you get when the door closes. And so, like Jackie just said, totally blindsided because it was different, right? And that's what happens if they don't heal it and don't learn it enough to go, oh wait, it's not about that. It's about invalidation. It's about someone being reliable, someone having empathy, and empathy for you, empathy for everyone in their lives. You can pick those things out after a while, but in the beginning, they pretend they have empathy and they're so concerned for you, but it's all part of the hook to get you in.
One last question, Tracy, will your PowerPoints be part of your book that's coming out, or are you willing to share your PowerPoint slides?
I could definitely share them for sure. The book is all about divorcing, pretty much all about divorcing, but I do have chapters on the masks, chapters on recognizing the different types. I also have in my support group down in Lakewood, I was at a Christmas party and this girl decided to just we were playing Cards Against Humanity and she's like, I'll just go over here and draw. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. Well, as you know, the Cards Against Humanity, 3 words end up being, she was drawing them. And so she ended up making images for all of my chapters. That one just happens to be that, but divorce is a game to narcissists. And so we kind of build that. So there's so much in this book that is going to, terminology, that's the dictionary, if you would, of the terms that we need to know, be familiar with.
That's great. I'm glad you showed that And if you're willing to share the slides, I'd be happy to post them to the interface page, the page that will stay up.
Okay.
So anyone from this presentation or others can take a look at your slides as well.
Sure.
There's so much information there and it went by so fast.
And you know what? To prepare for this, I've had a month. It was 118,000 words on my doc. So I had to like go, okay, when I get on this slide, what am I going to say? Oh my God. So I could have talked about narcissistic parents forever. I could have talked about them at work forever. Every single way they can present, we could talk 100,000 words on that. So I'm glad that the little pieces I could pull out for you are helpful.
Very much so. Well, I think we should close at this point. Some people are leaving and we're out of time. So thank you so much, Tracy, for your offering. And I'm glad that you were able to do this. And I'm sure many of us here will join me in appreciating you. So thank you. Let's pause here.
All right.
See you all soon.
Thanks.
You all.